All right, well, good morning, everybody. Hope you're all staying safe and healthy out there. Just want to thank you all for attending Cloudpoint Geographics webinar on upgrading your enterprise GIS, what it means, and how to keep up. My name is Bill Steele. I handle the business development and marketing for Cloudpoint. Micah Williamson, one of our certified GIS professionals, is going to fill us in on ArcGIS Enterprise. He's going to range from portal versus online, updates from Esri, even best practice recommendations. But before we dive in, I just want to let you know we'll be hosting more webinars in the coming weeks as most of us continue to experience the joys of working from home. So keep your eyes peeled and spread the word to anyone you think may benefit from attending our webinars. You can visit cloudpointgeo.com/webinars for a full list. You see some here. They've got registration links in there for those as well. So again, spread the word, and anything else that you guys think might pique your interest, sign up for those. Just want to give a quick note too about the functions you have. Obviously, you guys have noticed your microphones and cameras have been shut off. We will do question and answer at the end of the presentation. Feel free to send those questions in at any time. There's just a little Q&A box there down at the bottom of your toolbar. If you click that, it'll pop open the question and answer box to submit those there. And if there's any problems seeing or hearing or anything like that, just shoot me a message in the chat room. I'll be monitoring that as well. So most of you are familiar with us, but just to fill you in, we work in many sectors: public works, facilities, land records, utilities, transportation, engineering, even cemeteries. As a trusted business partner with Esri, we help people drive intelligent decision-making using mapping technology. And one of those technologies, of course, is ArcGIS Enterprise. And here to tell us more about that is Micah. So Micah, I'm going to turn the screen over to you. Go ahead.
Thanks, Bill. I'm going to share my screen. All right. Hopefully everything looks right. Hi, guys. Good morning, friends. Once again, I'm in the somewhat awkward position to know a lot of you since I've seen the visitor or the list. I know there's a lot of people here that actually could be doing this webinar yourself. So let's just kind of go through some of the things that we're going to talk about when we talk about enterprise GIS and how to stay updated with Esri. What we're going to do is we're going to discuss exactly what it is between ArcGIS Portal or Enterprise and ArcGIS Online. That's usually the biggest question because we've had ArcGIS Server for over a decade now, we as the user community. So we're going to talk about what the real difference is with Portal, because that's really what everybody wants to know. We're going to talk about some deployment options. We don't have a huge amount of time to dive into a lot of the best practices with you know, there's a whole list of things and certifications that you can is specific to your organization. We'll talk about that. And then we'll discuss how to find your version. I've got a login to a server that we're going to look at and just kind of go through that just in case you don't know. I'm sure most of you do, but just in case you don't know, we're going to find that. We're going to talk about what's new in the various versions from 10.6 up, and then what Esri intends to support with and how what that's going to look like. All right, so jumping in. ArcGIS Portal versus ArcGIS Online. The most obvious things is you have to install ArcGIS Portal, and you don't have to install ArcGIS Online, obviously. It's based on Esri's clouds, and yours is on your infrastructure. That can be cloud as well if you use AWS or Azure. It can be on your cloud, but it's your install. You are responsible for it. And so the next point is you are responsible for upgrading it. You can install it one time and never install it again. It doesn't ever get updated. It's not like Pro where it pops up, at least yet. It's not like Pro where it pops up and asks you what the hey, there's a new version if you wanted it. It doesn't do that. Enterprise doesn't do that because there's multiple pieces to it. There's multiple servers, and you have to do that manually. But Portal is extendable. You can add, you can get into the guts, you can change things, you can look at it, and you can actually understand where everything lives. ArcGIS Online is fixed. You can't really extend it at this point. So you get what you get. The biggest thing, one of the biggest things is this federation. And we'll talk a little bit about federation, but federation is essentially your ArcGIS server communicating with Portal and pushing all of the changes and all of the services up to Portal so that they're all already there. They're in your content. There is the web tier. So this is for logging on. They both have SAML, so that you can do for single sign-on purposes. You can use SAML and that, but for the web tier and Active Directory, etc., those things are only available on Portal. With Portal, you have unlimited viewers. I'm sure that you've all known and noticed that even the I can't do anything but look at your map viewer is $100 a year. And you have to purchase each one of those on ArcGIS Online. But with Portal, you can get as many viewers as you want. Now, the caveat is there's a certain give on all of those other viewers, but unlimited viewers is good for an organization who just wants their people to be able to see things and not necessarily edit anything. You want to edit, okay, that's going to cost. There's some extensions that we'll have to do at a different webinar. Kind of go in the further to look at utility or maybe even the parcel fabric. There's actually a parcel fabric webinar that we have scheduled, and then you can go completely offline in your own internal. We work with several organizations that have everything behind the firewall, so their users really don't see anything out at all. They can use maybe base maps from ArcGIS Online, but there's nothing published publicly. So you can kind of keep that firewall in place if you want to. Obviously with ArcGIS Online, you publish one thing wrong or share a thing with something, and then all of a sudden it's out there, right? So that is security is usually one of the biggest things, and just to be able to have the software that you have. Those are the biggest things, biggest differences between ArcGIS Online and Portal. Okay, but the interface, the way it looks, the way it acts, those things are identical, or as if the versions are the same, those things are identical. So and I'm sure we've all seen this, and this is my only Esri slide to talk about the base deployment. When we discuss the base deployment, there are these four components that are a part of the base deployment. There's the web adapter. These two web adapters that are right here, both serve a purpose to communicate to the outside world or to your external users. There is the portal, all right? That is another piece. This is ArcGIS server, your hosting server, all right? And then we have a data store. Now, what I want to talk about with the data store is your data store can be your SQL box, all right? That's a data store. Data store, lowercase d, a generic data store is essentially exactly where you have the data. Portal requires, if you want to have a hosting server, requires an Esri data store as well, okay? So these are two separate boxes, your SQL box and, your SQL box, your SQL box and Esri's data store that is for Portal. Those two things are two separate pieces. So I want you to be aware of that your SQL box, that you have all your direct connects to your or it could be Postgres or Oracle, but your internal relational SDE database is your SQL box. That doesn't change. That's still server. Portal needs and requires a Esri data store in order to fully work the way that it's intended to. The base, those are the components of the base deployment. All of these things can be on one server, technically, right? I would not recommend that. Unless you're testing, unless you're a very small organization, for anything production, I would not put it on one server. And the biggest thing is, what do I need? How do I need, what do I get? What we have to say is, we can only, what can you get from your IT? That's what you really need to focus on. That's the proper question. What can you get from IT? If you can get 4 servers, fantastic. Get 4 servers. For a base deployment, that's all you need for 4 servers. Now, sure, if you want to build it up, you can have multi-deployments, and you can kind of have redundancies and things like that, and really kind of go hog wild if you wanted to. But how many servers can you get? If you can get 4 servers, then you put each one on a component. You have your ArcGIS web adapter on one that's publicly facing out in the DMZ, right? Then you have portal on one, you have server on one, and then you have your data stores on one, right? That's great. 4 servers, fantastic. What if you can only get 3 servers? Okay, fine. Then I would put portal and web adapters on one, your hosting server on another, and the data stores on another. Now, this data store that I was talking about over here that is for portal, that can either be on server or the data store, whichever one has more beef, right? That's on, but that install, it can be on either the server or the data store or your gated server, either one, right? What if you only have 2 servers? Okay, now we're getting a little dicey on that. What I would probably do on that is I would probably, because portal is very heavy in what it needs as far as RAM, but you might only be licensed for 4 or 8 cores on your server. So what I would probably do on that is I would probably, if you can only get 2 servers, I would probably put these 2 together and put portal and your web adapters on another. Portal and web adapters on another. That's what I would probably do if you only had 2 servers. I would really try to get 3 or more servers for your organization with your IT department and kind of talk through that. All right. Moving on. Let's talk about each individual release. Now, I'm skipping past 5 because if you're at 10.4 or below, there's a huge change at 10.5. And at this point, because we're the most release is the most current release is at 10.8, I would skip 10.5 altogether and go to something more. I would probably, if you're jumping from 10.4 to something else, I would probably just go right to 10.7.1. I'll tell you about that, why, and for that in a minute. But what was released in 10.6? What was released in 10.6 was Enterprise Builder. Now, there was a cloud deployment solution before, but Enterprise Builder is that updated version. The App Launcher, this is the Brady Bunch little icon up in the corner, right? The 5 little squares. This is probably the biggest things that was released at 10.6. The idea that you can get into your content for a hosted feature layer and add fields, calculate fields, delete fields. You almost have like a data preview option in Portal with hosted feature layers. That's a great, that was a great rollout, right? Administrator can add base maps, pop-ups, support arcade. This is when distributed collaboration or portal-to-portal collaboration was introduced. And you can also use hosted feature views. So if you have a data that's sitting on your feature layer, you can make another layer that looks like that data, that has points to that same data, but it's symbolized in a different way or whatever. Oh, goodness sakes. All kinds of problems. All right. So 10.6.1. If you're upgrading, you have to anything below 10.5, you'll have to reauthorize. So if you're upgrading from 10.6, you don't have to reauthorize, but anything 10.5 or less, you would have to reauthorize. This is when Enterprise, I'll skip this one for a second. This is when Enterprise Sites was introduced. Having different departments can all have their own portal landing page if you wanted. You can say something is authoritative or something is depreciated. Either way, those are little icons that are there. Collaboration space, you can specify how much space that they can use for your portal collaboration, or you can tell it to sync. The biggest thing in 10.6 was this point. So beforehand, if you had a data store, you could actually tell your portal, hey, my data store is this other SQL database. Don't use Esri's data store. At 10.6, Esri required, in order to do this for a hosting server, not your SDE environment, for a hosting server, it required you to use Esri's data store. This was passed off as a performance enhancements because they wanted to tell you exactly where things, they wanted to know exactly where things were at, where they were located, and what to expect in the database. So they actually install a Postgres database in Portal. That's what the data store is a Postgres database kind of buried into the program files. But at 10.6.1, they required it for a hosting server. If you want to have a hosted service for your portal, you have to use Esri's data store. All right, and then you'll see that will for the rest of, and for now, even at 10.8, that's a big benefit, because then they were able to expect the database schema. And they know what to expect with the database schema. Okay, 10.7. What happened in 10.7? I'll need to reauthorize because we're at a new point version. This is a big enhancements. If you remember about this time, ArcGIS Online had a big change in what it looked like. Esri really talks, and they really love Jupyter notebooks. This is when you can have a notebook server. I've never used it. You can create offline maps. There's a big list of data to these hosted layers because of what I just talked about in 10.6. These two things right here are the biggest things in this, in 10.7. You can use Pro to publish to your server, not to just Portal, not to your enterprise, but to your ArcGIS server. Now that server has to be at 10.7, but you can use a tool in Pro to publish to your server, so you can get the REST endpoint. So that was actually a big change, and that one was actually because of the user community really pushed back on Esri. So we actually all helped, our screaming and complaining and squeaky wheels, got that done. Shared instances are a big thing in 10.7. Shared instances, wow, we're already at 20 minutes. Shared instances have already when you create a service, you have to say, hey, create at least one instance of this service. So it's an arcsoc.exe that's sitting there. There's one there for every service that you have, at least. And sometimes if you call more, then it'll make more. What a shared instance does, it says, you know what, let's have that be 0. If service sits there and nobody uses it, it doesn't consume any resources of your server just for sitting there. So, and then if it needs it, it'll grab one, but it's not exactly, it takes a little bit to spin up, but it's a way to reserve some of your resources for the rest of the server. Webhooks, new apps, a bunch of apps. HTTPS by default comes in 10.7. 10.7.1, there wasn't a whole lot of change or updates in 10.7.1, except for this. You've probably heard about Esri doing the viewer, the editor, the field worker, all that kind of stuff on ArcGIS Online. At 10.7.1 for Portal, that's when this all happens. When you can say, you know what, you get as many viewers as you want, but I only want maybe 5 editors or 3 field workers or whatever creators. Those are what we had before, were the creators and the viewers. That's what we had before. But now we have to go, we have these other options, so field worker, editor, and professional. Professional is you as a GIS person. That's the big change in 10.7.1. You have to have 10.7.1 in order to get those. 10.8, what do we have in 10.8? We'll need to reauthorize because it's a point version. When you create, let's get that. This is interesting. You can put your entire portal and your entire enterprise in read-only. Haven't done that. Actually just learned that when I was preparing for this webinar. So that's something to look at. Partial fabric and utility network functionality, which are 2 of those extensions that I talked about at the very beginning. Those are licensed as extensions in Portal. So that's kind of an interesting thing. You can draw a polygon, data store. There, we got an upgrade in ArcGIS Server Manager. Here's what I want to say. These first two points, these are the big things in 10.8. When you create an arc map, and this is funny that they're using ArcMap, and specifically, this is directly pulled from Esri's website. In ArcMap, when you reorganize your fields in ArcMap to display, that will persist as a feature service. So we've been kind of wanting to be able to reorganize our schema in our database. If we do that in ArcMap and then publish that as a service, that reorganization of the fields will persist even to the REST endpoints. That's cool if you didn't know. That's kind of a big thing. And then when you publish from Pro, you will use shared instances by default. That's what 10.8. All right, I know we're at 9:22. I'm going to kind of talk about a couple of different things, then we'll get to questions. Short-term support and long-term support. I don't know if you've heard about this or looked at this. I'm going to go to a website. This is the website that I have listed here. This discusses short-term support and long-term support in general, all right? So what this is essentially, if you are a dot version, a point version, 10.6, 10.7, 10.8, that is supported for 3 years. This is released in February 2020. March 1 of 2023, that will be retired. Support for that service will be retired. So their service for the point versions, their support only lasts 3 years. If we look at a 10.7 or a 10.7.1, we'll see that it lasts for double that. It lasts up to 6 years. 10.7.1, say it goes out to it released June of 2019, goes to June of 2025. So that's 6 years. So this is a whole table that kind of talks about that and there's a more explanation of long-term versus short-term supports. So essentially what you need to know, if you're at a 0.1 version, that support for that product lasts 6 years, but if you're only at a point version like 10.8 or 10.7, that only lasts for 3 years. So if you're going to land on one of these versions, I would probably land on a 0.1 version to be able to kind of get the most out of what you're looking at. And I'm going to go, now I want to go to server, just to see what you're at and where you're at on server. Really quickly, you hit the start menu. I'm on ArcGIS server. I know servers installed on this. If I go to services, and I'll be able to see exactly that ArcGIS server is installed on this. So that's my services tab. I see ArcGIS server, but it doesn't tell me what. I can go to a couple of different places, but the easiest place that I found to go to and keep things updated with patches and things like that, every time you install a server or really any part of enterprise, you get a check for updates little app that opens up and you can kind of see. And it shows you right off the bat what's installed. Well, on this one, I've got 10.6 installed, is installed on this server, as well as the data store. Now, if I wanted to install patches, these are the patches that I have installed. I have some security patches. If I wanted to install all patches, I would hit that button. I would see all the patches that I have available to me. I don't have desktop installed on this machine, so I don't need that patch. And we're not using branch versioning, so I don't need that patch. So I'm not going to install those. It's going to go. But if you didn't have anything, you might want to check this where that's at, and so you can see if there's any security patches. That's a way to check that one recent security patch that was released from the February of 2020 in Esri. Again, it's under the ArcGIS folder. You scroll down, it's called Check for Updates. All right, blowing through these. The last two things that I want to show you are these two PDFs, all right? These are PDFs that you should have and download and get. You can kind of get them from Esri's website. There's the functionality matrix and the architecting your deployments. I don't know why they took away the picture on the architecting, but it used to have a nice picture to it. But these two applications have kind of go through each version or each license level of server and what it is. Down at the bottom, it'll show you what you get as far as creators and users with each license level. Architecting talks exactly about what it means, how to architect, what to do, and if you only have certain things, what the best thing is to do, and some of the best practices. I know we're at pretty close to the end, so I want to open it up for questions. And Bill, have we got any questions at all?
None at the moment.
Oh, great.
Give it a minute here.
Okay. Oh, you can pop in when they do, but let me kind of go over some of these PDFs that I glossed over. So this PDF, that is the ArcGIS Enterprise Functionality Matrix. If you're able to look at this, it'll show you a lot of the things that we kind of talked about as far as the functionality of what it's at. It assumes, this is 10.8. Now, just to let you know, there are these functionality matrix for other versions. So you can find one for 10.7 or 10.6, and even the point 0.1 versions. I think they released them for that. But you're able to kind of know and understand at what license level you're able to get the tool that you want to have. And down at the bottom, I know I glossed over that. These are the supported databases that you're able to have, and what versions of those databases that you're able to have. And as well, if you go down to the very bottom, this creator type that you're looking at, these are the number of creator types that you have and how many viewers you get. For advanced, you get 50, and then unlimited users, of course. Standard, workgroup standard, you only get five creators. Now, what's not here are the field workers, are the editors. Those are going to be another additional cost to you as a license holder for that. I hope in the future they'll change that and be able to kind of roll in a couple of those with some of that, and you might be able to talk to your Esri representative to be able to get some of those or negotiate some of those, especially if you have an EA. I think those things are different. This is just based on Esri's website. The architecting your deployment is a very helpful document just to be able to print off and have. It's only about 30 or so pages, and it's really kind of written in, you can even kind of see it. It's written in a good language. It's not as it's not in really, it's written from a GIS perspective, a GIS person's perspective. We've all been tossed into this IT world, and this document actually has become much more helpful. It used to be hundreds of pages and just would be unhelpful, but now it's actually kind of limited and uses a lot of photos and a lot of clear explanations. And I really like this. It may seem like a daunting task, but don't panic. I appreciate that. And it kind of goes through some of the different components and what you actually need, and always Esri's install help documentation is fantastic. And if you can't do it with the help documentation and this architecture, then give us a call, and that's a service that we provide as well for installation and upgrading. We do all that stuff. I've done dozens and dozens of installs and upgrades over the years, and it's something that I know quite a bit about. So I think we're pushing right up against 9:30. If there are not any questions, we can.
Yep, no questions right now at the moment, Micah.
That's great.
So I'm gonna go ahead.
Maybe I should have had some canned questions to make
something planned. I'm gonna go ahead and take over sharing here, guys. I'm gonna pull up some contact information for us here. Cloudpointgeo.com/kickstart specifically is going to point you guys towards some of the information for enterprise there. I'm going to leave this up, and as we get questions, we got one here, Micah. Is this presentation going to be available? Went pretty quick. Thanks, though. Good question there. That's actually something we were discussing yesterday and today as we've done more of these. The short answer, yes. A longer answer is we haven't quite worked that out yet. But we have all of your guys' information, so when we do make these available, probably through some basic landing page on our website, we will send that information out to you guys, so most definitely. Well, guys, Micah, again, thanks very much for going through that. I'm going to leave this contact information up here. Guys, if there's anything else that you need from us, shoot us a question. But otherwise, thank you so much for attending, and hope to hear from you soon. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.